Hi guys, hi. How's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing the next review in my palette roulette series in which I choose a palette that's in my collection. Might also be in your collection. I utilize it for a week and I kind of come back to you and talk to you about my experiences with said palette. I have live swatches to show you. I have pictures to show you of all the looks, and I have a confession. I actually used this palette for a little over a week. I think it was more like 10 days because I had recorded my previous palette roulette, thought I was good, went along with my life, only to find out it was somehow not on my card to be able to edit. So that palette roulette went up a week late. With that said, the palette we're reviewing today is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. It is a neutral palette. It is a beautiful palette. It is Natasha Denona. We all know how I feel about it. I hope that you're in for it. I hope that you want to hear my thoughts and opinions, see the swatches, see the pictures of the looks I came up with. You may not be surprised, but there might be some surprising notes of interest for you. So I would implore you to stick around. With that said, for those of you who are new here today, hi, my name is Donna. I am a lover of all things high-end, colorful beauty and self-care, and I also work in the beauty industry as a district leader for Ulta. I get a lot of education in my position, and I like to bring that education to you. That means I am going to do a lot of reviews on this channel. I also do a lot of hauls. I do a lot of like shop my stash, a lot of like project pan, empties, regular beauty chit chat, and yo, you're here. So that means you also like regular beauty chit chat. And I hope that you choose to spend some time with me in your days. I do upload content 3 times a week. So I hope that you'll want to stick around, subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell so that you're notified every single time I upload a video. And with that said, let's move into this palette review. All right, my friends. Hi. So today we are reviewing the Natasha Denona Biba palette, and it's an all neutral eyeshadow palette, and I do have some words of wisdom to give you. So let's start with this. This is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. It comes in the hard casing that she has started to do lately in her palettes. It is just kind of a cream colored palette, and it does say in print in here that you can't even see on video, but it does say all neutral, kind of in the same tones as the palette. You can see it in person. I'll take a picture. I'll put it up here so that you guys can see it. But the front of the palette is just that, and the back of the palette just has the sticker here in the corner that tells you that it has a 24-month shelf life, and it's got the little holes in it letting you know that these are removable pans in this palette. This is one of her full-size palettes, so it does come in at $129 for the palette. I did get it on a Sephora event, right? So I got 20% off because I am rouge, but that's still really damn expensive for a palette. It does, however, have...
What? Just looking, I thought this shade had been dug into, but it's just how it looks.
It does have 1.2 ounces of product in it, 2.5 grams, or 0.08 ounces per pan. This is about twice the size almost as a ColourPop single. So these are relatively large pans of shadow. It is going to take you forever to go through this. And with that said, I do think that Natasha Denona, even at the $129 palette price point, is well worth it. I'm just going to get that out of the way. I have made comparisons in her pan size versus other pan sizes previously in a lot of my Natasha Denona palette roulette review videos on her palettes. I do have about 23 or so of her palettes in my collection. I've reviewed almost all of them at this point. So I will tell you, if you don't know, I 100% think Natasha Denona is worth it. This is 24-month shelf life, like I said. I do find that her palettes last way longer than 24 months in my humble opinion. I have the Lila palette that has been in my collection since man, right after it first came out, I would guess. I mean, it's been at least 4 years that that's been in my in my collection, maybe even 5. I think it was the Mother's Day after I started YouTube, so 4 years this Mother's Day, and it still functions as if it were brand new in my collection. There are 15 shadows in this in 3 different formulas. So you're going to see her cream to powder formula in here. You're going to see her metallic formula in here, which encompasses, you know, shimmers, duochromes, those kind of things. But you're also going to see her creamy matte formula. This is warm and cool toned neutrals, and I think it's very streamlined as far as color stories go in this palette. So this top row here leans a little bit more like sherbety orange. This middle row leans a little bit like rosy toned, and this bottom row is definitely those more cooler tone neutrals, almost grayish tones than the other ones, but they all work very, very well together. I mean, the eye look that I have on today has a little bit from every single row of shadows, but when Natasha Denona, and I say this in every single one of these, but when she creates a palette, she creates a palette in which you can get a uniformed eye look, whether you go straight across, straight down, diagonally, quads, you know, 9 pans. So all of these colors are going to work together. All of these colors are going to work together. All of these are going to work together. All of those are going to work together. Like any way you want to focus your attention in one of her palettes, they're all meant to work together with the ones in their immediate vicinity, but truly you can go all over the palette, and that's how I do my makeup. So today I have this color in my eye look. I also have this one, and I have this one. I mean, I kind of jump all over the place in a palette. So even though she makes her palettes in a way that all of it is very performance based on like the direct vicinity of one shade, you can definitely bounce around in her palettes. I did find that this really suited anything that I needed it to suit, because it did have the orange tones, the red tones, and kind of the cooler neutral tones. I didn't get as bored with it as I thought I was going to. Where I did see some boredom is that there are only 3 metallics in this palette. So my eye looks either had to have this shade on the lid, this shade on the lid, or this shade on the lid. You know, I mean, if I was wanting a metallic on the lid. With that also said, I like a wider toned, like matte or shimmer eyeshadow in my brow bone, and that doesn't really exist in this palette. I was pretty pleased that there was a black in this palette, because that's kind of unheard of for Natasha Denona. She doesn't put black in her palettes because the black powder could like inundate all the other colors and cause some discrepancies in their colorway. But there is a black in this palette. It isn't her blackest black powder, but it is a black in a palette, which if you look at the grand scheme of Natasha Denona palettes, you will not find that. Hardly. I mean, I think this is the only one that I have that it's in. Now, her little new mini Xenon palette does have her blackest black in there. And I do think that I might pick that up on the Sephora Rouge event, or what is that called these days? Like the Sephora sale. I will probably pick that palette up just because I would love her blackest black, but also I'm kind of drawn to cool tones a lot more lately than I ever have been in the past. I do think that because this has both warm and cool tones, because it does have both deep and light tones and all of the aspects of everything that you're going after in this, I do think that this is suited for a multitude of skin tones. And Natasha Denona kind of prides herself on being, you know, a brand that is able to give an abundance of shades to match any skin tone. The pigmentation is there, of course. Although I do not think, like I said, that this has like a very, very fair skin tone if you're going for that brow bone shade. I also don't think that it has a whole lot of like skin tone crease colors in it. If you're looking for a crease color any like lighter than this or deeper than that, if I'm honest, because the rest of these lean more orange or rosy, and that's just orange and rosy typically isn't a skin tone shade. So I do think that also, like, when it comes to the packaging of this, I do feel like these shades are in this packaging just a little bit more loose than any other Natasha Denona palette that I have, if I'm honest, even if it is in the plastic packaging. These kind of rattle around in here, and it makes me kind of fearful, honestly, because Natasha Denona shadows are pretty stereotypically fragile. So I am just really happy that I store my Natasha Denona palettes in this fashion so that they're not like leaned up on the edge or anything like that, so that the opportunity for those pans to fall out is less likely. Just food for thought. It does seem like these ones are a little more loosely packed in this packaging than any of the other Natasha Denona palettes I have. So this palette does have the 3 metallics that I pointed out. There are also 4 cream to powder formulas, which are pretty controversial in the beauty enthusiast space because they're a little bit more difficult to work with as far as a blend goes. I know that I also did have a problem with them before I got used to utilizing them and really geeking out on Natasha Denona videos and figuring out how she did it best. And that's really how I started using her cream to powder formula so that I also could do it best. The cream to powder ones are going to be Rayon, which is this one here, Tone, which is this one here, Tor, which is this one here, and we have Spot, which is the black one here. So these two would be difficult colors to really work with in the first place, right? And then you add that cream to powder essence to it, and a lot of people find that that is really difficult to work with. I don't mind them. I feel like with the cream to powder formula for Natasha Denona, you literally need a small smidge of the color to get it to work for you, and place it and then blend it seems to be the best way for me. And also using a really small brush or very tight, densely packed brush. The fluffier the brush, the more problems you're going to have with this formula, in my opinion. So then the rest, besides those 4 and these 3, are creamy mattes. Personally, I got bored with it because I found myself really wanting to pull for other shimmers because there's only 3. And if I did an eye look, I put my shimmers on my lid, one of those 3 shades had to go on the lid. And it was just, I don't know. Lucky for me, I do have quite a few single shadows in my project pan and my Shop My Stash, so I just pulled those in to help make this great for me. And one of the shadows that I actually pulled in, one of the single shadows that I actually pulled in was the Natasha Denona Multichrome, Chromium liquid eyeshadow, and this one is in Infra Nude. This worked so good with this palette, and a lot of the looks that you'll see had that on the lid space. I found that after I got done using those 3 shimmers, I was like, okay, I'm over it. And started pulling that in, and then started pulling in like my ColourPop Super Shock This in my project pan or something like that, just to give me a little more momentum in my journey with this palette. But I would say that this is definitely a standalone palette. You can definitely get, you know, everyday eye looks out of this, and they don't hardly ever like overlap with each other. There's not a whole lot that you can't do with this palette. It's got a great black, it's got a great brown. I am all for red as a crease. I didn't find that there was much that I couldn't do with this, but I did get bored with the fact that there was only 3 shimmers. I, however, am a makeup consumer that likes my palettes to be a little bit more 50-50, because I do like to have an overabundance of choice, which is why, you know, my makeup collection looks like it does, because I like to have a multitude of choice. I would say this is a great workhorse palette. It's definitely one that can be a standalone palette, but I also think that you could definitely use it as a functioning palette to play well with other palettes in your collection, other single shadows in your collection, because it does play well with itself, but it also plays well with others. I just feel like that's pretty categorically how I feel about Natasha Denona. We've all been through this before. We've heard me like review Natasha Denona palettes before in the past. I have been very, very honest with you when there's been a palette or a shade that doesn't work well for me. This palette did not have any shades that didn't work well for me. This palette did not have any shades that I didn't love. As far as usage of it, like, did it blend out well? Yes. Did they work well? Yes. Did they work over primer? Yes. Did they work not with primer? Yes. Did they work well with each other? Yes. Did they work well with any other shadow? Yes. Everything about this palette was awesome, and this could be and might be one day one of the only neutral eyeshadow palettes in my collection, if not the only neutral eyeshadow palette in my collection, because y'all know I love color. Although here lately I've been doing a lot of neutral eye looks. I kind of just dig how the neutral looks on my face though too. Today I've got a nice little like halo eye. You know what's funny is I was watching Jen from Jen Love on her channel, and she was doing her her live chat this morning, and I never am, I'm on the West Coast, she's on the East Coast. I'm never up, well, not up, but I never get to her lives in time to watch them live, but I was watching the replay. She was talking about the things that she has stopped doing in her makeup routine, and one of the things that she was talking about was cut creases and spot or halo eyes. And as I was doing a halo eye, I was listening to her say this, and I'm like, no, I'm definitely still doing those. So so there's that. I do love this palette. I do think that it's well worth it. Again, it's $129, but each one of these pans has about double the amount of product that you're gonna get in any single eyeshadow pen from any other competitor out there. I think that most single eyeshadow pens are somewhere between 0.04 and 0.06 ounces of product. These are 0.08. So for some of them, it's going to be double. For others, it's going to be like 1.5 times the amount of product that you're going to get in a single pen of eyeshadow that they're charging you $20 for, unless they're ColourPop. So you do you pick what works for you. I do love Natasha Denona. I always have, and I always will. I think that, at some point she could probably be the only eyeshadow formula in my collection, and I would be perfectly fine with it. Just some more little tidbits of information for you. Super easy to blend. I had zero problems blending even the black in this palette, which was phenomenal for me. It also gave me about a 10 to 12 hour wear time regardless of primer or no primer. I didn't really see any difference in the wear time, nor did I see any difference in the application on whether I was wearing a primer or no. And for primer on my eyes all week, if I was using a primer on my eye, I didn't try it with a tacky primer, but I was using the Ulta Beauty Collection matte eyeshadow primer on my eyes when I was using an eyeshadow primer on my eyes. The way I apply Natasha Denona eyeshadows is I don't typically swirl or blend until after I have the eyeshadows placed anyway, so I don't know that it would perform any differently over a tacky base than I saw it perform over my matte base. But I mean, I absolutely could be wrong, and I absolutely have been wrong in the past when it comes to how these shadows perform. But for me, that is the eyeshadow primer I used. I saw zero difference between use with that primer and use without that primer. 10 to 12 hours of wear is good enough for me. And that was just because I took my eyeshadow off at that point, not because I let it go. And Natasha Denona is one of those eyeshadows that I only know from experience that I could go to bed with it on my eyes and wake up the next morning and just have to touch it up slightly, and it would still look the same as it had the day before when I applied it. So it just sticks around. It's just an all around good, long lasting eyeshadow formula. So with that said, let's do some swatches and then we will pick a new palette. Okay, first row we have Rustic, which is a deep copper metallic. Then we have Prairie, which is a sherbety camel color creamy matte. It leans very orange. Then we have Cocoa. Cocoa is a burgundy brown creamy matte. Then we have Freckle. Freckle is a kind of corally toned creamy tan color that is also a matte. And then we have Shine, which is a champagne metallic. So that row does have two of the metallics. They both kind of lean on the warmer side. That champagne leans a little more corally than the other champagne in the palette. And then, of course, that copper. That is my favorite color of copper, if I'm honest. The one that has kind of like an orangey feel to it. It reminds me of like patinaed bronze. It's just so, so, so pretty. And in an eye look, it's gorgeous. All of these feel very, very silky, but I don't know if you guys can hear. The pans just kind of move around in this palette, and that's why I say I think this is just a little bit more loosely packed in the palette. Like, they're all magnetic pans, right? But it feels like they're almost not magnetized to the bottom of the palette. Even though they don't fall out, you saw me holding it up, they're not falling out. But I did, when I was going through reviews to find the star ratings, so on Beautylish it has a 4.5 star review with 31 reviews. On Sephora it has a 4.4 star with 445 reviews, and on Natasha Denona it has a 5 star with 8 reviews. We all know how I feel about that. But for Beautylish and Sephora, all of the 1-star reviews that led up to them having a 4.5 or 4.4 all stated something about their pans falling out. I haven't experienced that at all with this. I've not had any of the pans fall out yet, but I can see how that might be a problem because, like I said, it does feel like they're just a little bit more loose on that magnet than most of her other palettes are. All right, second row, we have Pasha. Pasha is a red-toned rusty brown. It is a creamy matte. Then we have Monroe, which is a pink toned champagne metallic. Then we have Rayon. Rayon is one of the cream to powder formulas, and it is a rich like burgundy shade. It does lean kind of like dusty rosy. Then we have Buff, which is considered an antique rose, and I would say that's pretty accurate for that color. It is in my eye look today, and it does appear on my eye look very, very rose toned. And then we have Tone, which is a terracotta cream to powder. That one I think I used the least in my eye looks. Okay, last row we have Seed, which is a deep chocolatey brown creamy matte. Then we have Tor, which is a really deep gray that has kind of a brown tone to it, and it leans brown also in an eye look, kind of like a almost taupey brown instead of a dark gray. But with the other gray in the palette, it does look very gray. This is a cream to powder formula, so this is one of the ones that people consider just a little bit harder to manipulate in an eye look. This light gray is called Sculpture, and it's very much a neutral light gray creamy matte. And then we have Spot, which is the black one in the palette. It is a deep black cream to powder. And then we have this one, which is called Tusk, and it is a light beige creamy matte. So these are the shadows in the Natasha Denona Biba palette. I think that you can see that there is a lot of variation in this palette to be had. Not a lot of the shadows in this palette really resemble any other shadow in this palette, so I don't think that there's any redundancy in this, which I think is a problem with most neutral eyeshadow palettes. I do, though, just personal preference, I do like more shimmers in my eyeshadow palette, so the fact that this had, in a nutshell, 12 mattes and 3 shimmers, I was really kind of bummed about, and I did get bored with it because of that. Other than that, like, I really do think that this is a great palette to have in anybody's collection. I do think that it's a palette that everybody should have in their collection. Everybody needs a good neutral palette. I do have a couple of neutral eyeshadow palettes in my collection, but I do think that this one would be the one that I would pull for. Even before I pulled for like bronze or glam, this one would be the one that I pulled for. So I am really happy to have it in my collection. I picked it up, I think, in the last Sephora sale, maybe last year this time's Sephora sale. I can't remember exactly. I'm really happy to have it in my collection for sure. So with that said, I am going to go pick my new palette and I will be right back. So, as you're seeing this, I am on PTO from work. So I have a whole week where I can play. I'm really planning on doing my taxes, which I have waited far too long to do. Doing my taxes, getting set up in my YouTube world so that I don't feel so stressed to, get something edited and uploaded and recorded or whatever, and deep cleaning my house. Those are the things I plan to do while I'm on PTO. But, oh, and also cry because my daughter moved away and I miss her. Already, I miss her so deeply. It's not even funny. But also, I know that I'm going to be at home. I'm going to be able to play with some crazy eye looks. And like, I went back and forth between what I really wanted to play with and what I didn't. With that said, there's also the Sephora sale coming up. And Natasha Denona has a brand new palette out. And I am just not sure if I'm going to pick it up or not. And if you guys know, I am not a big pastel lover. I'm just not. I have had some really great pastel palettes in my collection. I think Midas has a really great, their Artistry 1 and 1.2 are amazing and they're both pastel. I love the Sugar Pill Fun Size, which is also considered pastel, but not like super pastel. But for the most part, I really don't like pastels, and that's what Natasha Denona's brand new palette is. But it is currently in my cart. You guys will probably see a video on that coming this week or, next week early. But I picked this palette because I want that palette-ish and want to see how I feel at the end of the day. So I will probably also pull in the Fun Size palette just because it has a lot of those pastel shades that I might need with this palette. But the palette that I'm pulling in is the IBY Enlighten palette. And this is a palette that I got through Ipsy, I do believe. And I have had it in my collection now for a while. The packaging is beautiful, but I've never used it because this is a color story. So I'm a little underwhelmed, honestly, with these two top rows, but these two down here really speak to me. In addition, it's springtime. Let's have some fun with color. It was between this one and also the Nomad, I think it's called Cartagena, Cartagena, I can't remember, palette, but it's all like oranges and pinks and whatnots. But this resembles to me more the Natasha Denona palette than that one does. So I'm going to go with this one. We'll see how I feel about it. We'll see what kind of looks I can get from it. Who knows? Like, I was not a cool toned girl in the past, and here lately I'm very drawn to cool tones on my eyes. I've never really been a neutral lover, but here we are. Like, you'll see some of the looks I got from this palette I actually loved. So, like, loved. Would do 100 times all over again. And with neutrals, you can kind of get away with that. With color, it looks stupid if you're repeating the same eye look over and over and over again. But there's that. So if you guys are interested in seeing me review the IBY Enlighten palette, I do encourage you to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you're notified when I upload. But with that said, I used to upload these every single Monday. Now I'm uploading them every single Wednesday, and I do hope that you will join us next week for the review of this. I do hope that you all enjoyed today's review on the Natasha Denona Biba palette, and I hope to see you again in the future. I hope that 2022 is treating you all kindly, that you are doing well. We are almost done with March, and we are cruising right into April, and I cannot wait for summer. How about you? Are you all doing a palette a week or a palette a month or a palette of whatever? Let me know. I would love to come and support your videos as well. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I do hope that you did enjoy it. I do hope that we do see you again, and I hope that you are getting along as best you can in this crazy, crazy world we're living in right now, but love each other. Love each other from afar. Thank you so much. Bye, friends.